Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and today I am so pleased to announce I have David Marmor, writer and director of 1BR, as well as Ronen Landa. He is the composer from 1BR, as well as The Pact and At the Devil's Door, just to name a couple. How you guys doing today?
Great. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
So excited. 1BR, guys. I got the links down here in the description so you guys can check this out. Fantastic movie. I had such a good time watching this. David, what can you tell us a little bit about the movie? We're going to try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. So your experiences with writing, directing, how'd this come about?
It started as kind of like, it was based on how creepy the apartment was that I lived in when I first moved to LA. There was just something really surreal about moving into this very cheery looking place and then, waving to people on the breezeways and not knowing anything about them and hearing weird sounds as people walked overhead. And I also had I had a cat in the apartment that I wasn't supposed to have. So that also added some anxiety, and that made its way into the movie as well. So that was sort of the seed of it. And then, just a lot of years of writing and it somehow turned into an actual movie somehow.
Thank God it did. How's your cat doing? Is it okay?
Well, sadly, that cat died of natural causes. But I have another cat that was an orange tabby. And I have another cat that's an orange tabby who's 12 years old and very crotchety, but doing great and living a very happy, healthy life.
At least the cat that was then died of natural causes, because it could have been much worse.
Yes.
Ronen, the score in this film really helps to heighten the anxiety. Where did you get some of your inspiration at for doing the score for this film?
Oh, wow. Well, I think a lot of the score is this whole movie is about our main character, Sarah, and played by Nicole Bryden Bloom, who did a amazing job with her role. And she's on screen basically the whole time. So I think the score was really meant to be kind of an extension of her mindset, an extension of her psychology, and really inside her performance in a way and bring out some of the subtext that's going on with her. So, I was really inspired by her work, by Nicole's work. And yeah, I think, a lot of everything we were coming at was to bring some of this natural emotional sound and fuse it with like that, horror sound that we're used to.
Mm-hmm. And you did a great job. I've said it so many times, a score can make or break a movie, and what you did, you really do help to heighten the anxiety when needed. And you also help to give us a little bit of a break every now and then too. So absolute applause to you. Great job. Great job overall, guys. I'm so happy to be able to say that.
Bow in my job. I sit here in a windowless room by myself. I know no one ever asked me to bow, but if you clap for me, I'll bow.
No, this is something exciting for me, because a lot of people, they want to talk to actors and actresses, and which I do as well. But I love behind the scenes stuff. I love talking to producers, directors, writers, composers, because without you guys, we don't have these actors in front of the camera that are doing their job, because it doesn't work if we don't have a whole team going. So going behind the scenes and getting into your guys' minds. There are films that are so iconic because of the score. You look at Halloween, you look at Jaws, you look at Star Wars, The Imperial March. Everybody knows those theme songs, even if they haven't seen the film. Kids know the Jaws theme. Kids know the Halloween theme. And even if they haven't seen those films, that shows how strong a composer can be to a film. So sometimes it's overlooked because they think, it's just the music. But it's a huge part of the film, man. And you did a great job on this movie.
Thank you. Yeah, that's I feel like that's the goal, is to eventually write a theme that enters everybody's brain like that, the way Jaws did or Psycho did. And if my entire body of work can be, reduced to like that'll be, then I know I will have succeeded. So.
Right. Well, man, again, I don't want to get too spoilery with this movie, but guys out there, keep tweeting at Dark Sky. Let them know that we want a sequel. when you watch this movie and you see the end, you're going to absolutely know why. If you haven't watched this movie yet, pause this interview. Links down here. Check it out. Then come back and finish this interview because, guys, you're not going to want to miss this movie. It's a whole lot of fun from beginning to end. It's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. It's a blast. I had so much fun with this, and it's kind of twisty at the end. It doesn't happen the way you think it's going to happen. So much fun. But we are here, guys, to talk about the first horror movie that you ever watched. What got you into the genre? David, what was the first horror movie you ever watched?
So it's a complicated question. We were talking a little bit before. Like the first movie I saw that treated me like a horror movie does, that really scared the I don't know if can we swear on this?
100%. Fuck yes, you can.
Scared the fucking shit out of me was Raiders of the Lost Ark, actually, which I saw way too young. I was probably 8 when I saw it. And I mean, for weeks afterwards, I was like having nightmares about melting faces and about tarantulas and impaled people and skeletons. Like that movie was just like too much for me. And then the other one I remember really being like, just kind of terrified of, which I also saw too young, was 2001, maybe the scariest G-rated movie ever made. And what really did it, there's a lot of sort of conceptually scary stuff that I think older people, adults would be scared by. What scared me was the last sequence, the Stargate.
The third
sequence.
act there.
Yeah, where it's in that room and like I'd never seen anything like that, where it's like jumping, he's old and then he's young. And it's just like, I was like, what am I looking at here? But then the first, I think, and I don't know if this is really the first, I was thinking about this before, like, I don't know if this is the first horror movie I ever saw, but it's the first one I really loved and was just like, this is awesome, was An American Werewolf in London.
Okay.
Just like, it's so unlike any other movie I'd seen at the time. And really even still today, like, it's not like any other horror movie. It's so funny and it's so low key in certain places. The whole relationship with Griffin Dunn's character is—
It's a love story, man. American Werewolf in London is a love story. And man, I can't tell you how many times as a kid I watched it and, my mom made me cover my eyes during the porno theater, but like, It's like, yeah, you can watch these guys get ripped apart by a werewolf, but don't you listen to no titty sounds.
Right.
So I'm going to run with American Werewolf in London for you, since that is the first horror movie. I love that movie too. That's a movie that is very, very close to my heart. So let's run with that. Awesome. Ronen, what was your first horror movie?
So yeah, so we were talking. The similar answer for me is Willy Wonka. As far as going back, for me that movie was just terrifying. The things that happened to those kids, and when they got ejected from the factory, it was too much for me. And then really I did everything I could to avoid horror movies for most of my life. And when I was a teenager, I went to see Scream with friends, and I remember that, and that reinforced the idea: stay away from horror movies, because I am so easily terrified. I'm so scared. I'm such a scaredy cat, and all I want to do is crawl into like my own fingers and hide. And I was like, why am I spending money on a ticket and popcorn to be miserable for 2 hours? This is terrible. And please, could I have another Adam Sandler movie? And
that's terrifying.
I was 14. And that was where my brain was at. And so I stayed away. And then really it was when I discovered that film music, that film scoring would be a world that I could enter, that I decided to actually start looking into film and cinema. And in college I was taking a film class, and I was watching Psycho and The Shining and stuff like that, and starting to delve into the classics. And that was I think that was when I started to actually have like a real appreciation. But as a kid, it was definitely Scream, but maybe The Faculty. But I think it was Scream.
Okay. Well, okay. Usually I ask, I know that you guys are kind of strapped for time, so rather than asking each of you a question, I'm going to bounce the questions back and forth for you. That way we can I would like to get as many answers as I can out of you guys as well. David, when you think about American Werewolf in London, what is the first scene that pops into your head? The first scene that you think of when you think of that movie?
I think the first scene that pops into my head might be the scene on the moors. I wouldn't say that's like my favorite scene in the movie, but like when I first think of the movie, I think of that scene where they're like, stay off the moors, and then they go walking and they're just they get lost in conversation, and suddenly they look around and they're like, uh-oh. Um, it's just such a simple scene, but it's so scary, and you kind of can't see anything around them.
Yeah.
And you don't really see anything in that scene. It's a very elliptically done scene, but it's really scary. And then of course, like, I'm going to think of that transformation scene. Like, I've still never seen anything like that. It's so well done.
Well, the practical effects in American Werewolf in London are second to none, man.
It won the Academy Award. It won the Academy Award for those effects, and well-deserved.
That was just going to say well-deserved. And
yeah.
One thing I really like about that movie, I think is underrated, is the fact that the whole movie, he's deteriorating more and more. He's not just a ghost that's next to him.
Right.
It's like he's deteriorating with his mental state. Like his physical is going with his mental. And it's just, that's such a cool scene for me.
Yeah, it's so great. So great.
Yeah. And then Ronen, when we're talking about Scream, what scene affected you the most and why?
Gosh, I'm pretty sure I didn't see most, but again, most of the movie was like this. So I'm trying to think back. I think those telephone calls, and I think that, that's the thing, is that I don't need to see anything. It's just it's even just the sense, the impending doom that a good horror film, even a pop horror film like that, which is maybe a great example of a pop horror film, because it could do that. With so little, it can achieve so much, especially when you're dealing with a giant wuss of a film watcher like myself. And listen, I have to embrace this. You guys have to understand that this is what makes me, Dave and I have talked about this a bunch. This is actually what makes me a good composer for horror films, because my whole trajectory was weird. I kind of went away from all that stuff, but I was getting into experimental music. I was getting into weird music and exploring that on kind of an academic level. And coming back into, when Nick McCarthy, who made The Pact, who directed The Pact, kind of heard some of that music, he was the one who said, I think you could score horror. And he brought me back into this world. And we've been working on translating those skills ever since. But and I've gained so much appreciation for the genre. But it's an interesting thing, because I'm so deeply affected by just like the smallest amount of tension that I just all my hairs are on end, and it's a phone call.
You probably didn't do very good with this scene in the movie, did you?
No, I shot a video, because I had to score that scene, and when you're scoring a scene, you are watching it over and over and over and over again, and because you're adjusting the music and adjusting the times, and literally every time I took a video of myself, and just to post on Instagram for a laugh, but it was honest, it was authentic. It was literally like watching the movie and then every and
well, I see, especially with that scene, that is such a hard scene to watch the whole time.
It was rough on me. Thanks, Dave. It was rough on me.
Well, whatever you've been doing when it comes to scoring, please continue to do it, because it's working.
Yeah. It's just translating. It's that fear that I feel, and I just put it out into the music.
Yeah, that was what I sort of my theory about the whole thing is, I think that's one of the things that makes you such a great composer for horror, is that like you feel it so much more deeply than most of us jaded
than I really
film watchers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all so desensitized that it's nothing now.
But we're just looking for the bigger hit, right?
Yep.
I'm in touch with my sensitive inner child, and that's the one who watched Willy Wonka, and that's how it goes for me.
Right. All right. Well, Dave, let me ask you this next question. We talked about what scene affected you the most in American Werewolf. What is your favorite scene in American Werewolf in London?
Oh man, that is tough. There's so many great scenes in that movie.
And there's so many different ways you can go. You can go with the love scenes. My favorite scene personally is when he's cussing out the cop in the square, trying to get himself arrested.
Or
that's you can go like the dream sequence of him with the deer.
That one's insane. Yeah. Also the other dream sequence where he's in his house and like Frank Oz is involved somehow, and like the Muppets. That one is totally it's
the
totally
Nazi werewolves.
But yeah, I think actually maybe my favorite scene still is just a really simple suspense scene, which is the first kill. It's in the subway. It's in the tube.
Okay.
And there's that like one businessman who kind of gets left behind off the train. And it's the first time you see him as the wolf. And it's
Yeah.
not like any werewolf you've ever seen before. It's basically just like a giant wolf. And that whole thing on the escalator. That scene is so like simple and so clean and so well done. I just love it.
And another good thing about American Werewolf, something, I don't know if you've seen this movie, Ronen, but something you might appreciate about this is the sounds in this movie. The werewolf does not do a, oh, you know, it's almost like a blood curdling scream. And the sounds they do in this movie, it's really, especially for the time that it was way ahead of its time when it came to effects and sounds. So I think it's a movie you may appreciate.
So it's just really interesting, you know, because what I've been thinking, this is just on the top of my head, I've been thinking a lot about Wolf, the Jack Nicholson movie, which I saw too, and just the Ennio Morricone score, because Ennio Morricone is going on my mind because he just passed away. And you know how that movie also plays like you know, a romance, and very interesting, you know.
And something I've talked about on this channel a lot, and the people that watch often probably get so tired of hearing this little spiel, but I think that horror movies are just as emotional as any rom-com out there. I mean, you look at horror movies and they really play on your emotions. How many love stories do you have in horror movies? Or Pet Sematary, a little kid getting hit by a semi.
That's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. That it's such a sad movie. Like it's so, and just, well, I could talk about that movie for hours.
I watched this one movie where he plays on your emotions. This girl doesn't want to be around her dad, so she tells him to go fuck off. She doesn't want to see him until it's his funeral, and then he slaps her. Like, it plays on your emotions. I can't remember the name of the movie, man, but
that sounds
it really
brutal.
plays on your emotions.
All right. Yeah, I gotta watch that one.
It's like it's worth watching.
Yeah.
It's definitely worth a watch. If it comes to me, I'll let you know.
Please do.
And now, Ronen, I know you said you're not really big on horror movies, but we're talking about Scream, so I'm going to go Scream on you here real quick. What's your favorite horror movie? If you had to choose your favorite, what would it be?
Oh, my favorite. But we're not talking about Scream or Scene. We're talking about any movie.
No, okay. Yeah, any horror movie. Just your favorite horror movie.
My favorite scene of Scream. That's the credits. So that's easy. No, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but I think Psycho is just, so to me, Psycho is just like such a incredible example of filmmaking on so many levels, and the depth of Psycho, and how many different ways you can analyze it. And I think it was, I'm trying to think of when it was. I think it was like a year ago or something like that. There was a screening of Psycho with a live orchestra, and I actually went to that with Nick McCarthy. And it's always extra fun because I can kind of nerd out about the music and what Bernie Herrmann was up to. And you know, he had such interesting ideas. He was like, well, Hitchcock is doing, you know, a black and white movie, and so I want to strip out all the color of the orchestra, and we're going to do just you know, just a string orchestra. And so his score was really designed to match that black and white aesthetic. And but then, wow, when you're listening to the orchestra perform it in person, and you're really experiencing just the depth of his writing for strings, and you know, all these articulations. So I mean, it's like a catalog. It's incredible, and the melodies and the harmony. I mean, he's really one of my heroes, and and I think kind of one of my main models for the I would say kind of my line of scoring horror movies, which is that, you know, that emotional line that, you know, we're not just going for kind of bombast all the time. It's about, you know, finding the balance so that, you know, we kind of seduce the audience with those more sentimental scenes and those more emotional scenes, and get them invested in the characters emotionally. And then when, you know, the scary stuff happens, it's really hitting hard. And, you know, so I think he's one of my real models for that. But, you know, going to see Psycho with, and I've studied it in film classes too, but going to see it was, you know, with a filmmaker and having their, you know, all those ideas and all the cinematic concepts that Hitchcock was bringing into that movie. And look, even the structure of it, I mean, nobody's trying that anymore. Nobody's even trying to mess with structure. Everyone's
Nobody was trying that back then. I mean, it was an insane thing to do.
It was crazy. It was
Yeah.
crazy, and it was bold, and that is such a huge inspiration. Which is, what can we do every time out? Whenever we get an at bat in this industry, it's such a gift to be able to go and make some art and be a part of that cultural conversation. And you want to go and do something bold and not just do something that has been done a million times. You want to bring something original to it. And so that film is just a huge inspiration on that level.
And it is so cool hearing you nerd out about this. 'Cause this is how I nerd out about when I'm bragging to my friends that I get to hang out with you guys, so hearing you nerd out about something like this is so cool. And when you're bringing up Psycho, to me, this is just my opinion. I think Psycho was really the first slasher film out there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I agree with that. At least I don't know one that was earlier.
But
Right.
but yet, I mean, when you're going through the first half of it, I mean, it's playing like a thriller, and you're feeling, and the way he brought those two elements together was so shocking.
Yeah.
And and when sometimes you'll get movies that are just going to go slasher, from top to bottom, and that's it's a different feeling. But the way he was able to balance those is still so weird and so cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the thing about Psycho is they had a remake. They had a color remake.
Yeah.
But the movie was so perfect that they shot it scene by scene. They didn't even really change anything.
Yeah.
So I talk to people that are like, "Oh, that Psycho remake sucks." I'm like, "What? It's the same. It's the same thing. It's scene for scene. Like,
Yeah.
I can
Shot
get
for
saying
shot.
it was unnecessary, but to say that it was a bad movie, I don't see that at all. I thought it was fantastic. It was cool to see it modernized. But I agree. Psycho is one of those movies that you couldn't touch. You have all these movies that get remade and they change so much on them, but Psycho, they couldn't even change it. It's perfect the way it is.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you, Dave, we're talking about American Werewolf. What was your opinion on the sequel, American Werewolf in Paris?
Did not see it.
Keep it that way.
Yeah, it didn't seem interesting. And I honestly, maybe they'll surprise me, but I'm not. I've heard about this remake that Landis' son is doing, and that doesn't particularly interest me either.
No.
My theory on remakes is I hate it when people remake great movies. I think there are movies that are perfect to be remade, which are movies that had a great idea but weren't that good. Like, to me, Ocean's 11 was the perfect movie to remake. Because the original, it's a great idea, but it's not a good movie.
No. And the original had the Rat Pack, didn't it?
Yeah. But they were just like, you could tell that they just were having a party. Like, they didn't care about the movie, right? But yeah, and then the remake is great.
Yeah. I love Oceans. I love all the Oceans movies, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I always end this with a skull count. I'll start with you, Ronen. I'm sorry. I know that it's kind of hard to say this because you didn't really watch much of the film, but we're going 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. How many skulls would you give Scream?
I'm gonna give it 5 skulls, because why wouldn't I? Listen, and you know what? I think anybody who makes a freaking movie deserves 5 skulls, because making a movie is hard as hell, and and it's crazy. It's crazy to come up with an idea and just sit there at a typewriter and say, here's a movie, and then actually find millions of dollars to get that thing into production, and sometimes and
When does that happen?
No, well, I don't know, Scream. And
you get millions of dollars, you can afford a computer. You don't need to use a typewriter.
Picking apart everything you said now.
That screenwriter had a typewriter. I'm willing to bet on it. And
I'll say, I think this is starting to turn into a therapy session now.
Yeah.
everyone deserves. No, I mean it. It's hard. So listen, 4 skull minimum.
And I'm with you because if you get a chance, just research this. Look at the movies that came out, the horror movies that came out the year before and the year of Scream, and then the horror movies that came out the year after and the year after that, and just look at the change that Scream made in the genre. I mean, Scream completely revitalized the horror slasher genre. Without Wes Craven's vision of Scream, who knows where the horror genre would have been now. So I can agree with you. Just the influence alone of Scream gives it a 5 skull. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So same question for you, Dave, with American Werewolf. 0 to 5.
Where do you go from there? I got to say 6. It's one of my favorite horror movies. It's one of my favorite movies. I just love it. It's such a strange movie. Like, it's still not like anything else I've ever seen. So I'm going 6. I don't care that that's after.
No, I think that's perfect, Dave. Have you seen that Twitter feed of that kid who rates dogs and like they're all like 14 out of 10 because they're dogs? Why would you give a dog anything?
Yeah, you can't just give a dog 10.
I think the minimum is like a 12 out of 10. So
Nice.
They're awesome.
That's awesome. Well, hey, don't go anywhere, guys. I got a couple more questions for you before you go. Everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. This is going to be a double header. So you're watching this episode today. Tomorrow, I'm going to have some of the cast of the movie as well. So make sure you're watching this film so you can get caught up on it. So tomorrow might be a little bit more spoilery, not much, but make sure you're checking it out. As always, I'm Ken Sledge. Stay what you are. Keep talking horror, and we'll talk to you guys soon.